The Entangled Fly by Hannah Flagg Gould. LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. Ah, thou unfortunate, poor silly fly, Caught in a spider's web, hung there to die! What could have tempted thee, what led thee there, For thy foe thus to throw around thee the snare? Struggling and crying, so ne'er can unweave From thee the silken threads, laid to deceive. Sorrowing for wandering comes now in vain, And with one thus undone grief adds to pain. Yet I will rescue thee, unwary thing! Thou mayst again be off, high on the wing, If thou wilt promise me hence to be found Never more as before on evil ground. Trust not the flatterer skilled to ensnare, He is a wily one. Think and beware Down to his dusky ways no more descend. Little fly, thou and I both want a friend. Man hath an enemy whose snare is laid Softly and silently, deep in the shade. Light by the tempter shunned, only can show Where secure, free, and pure our feet may go. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Peach Blossoms by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Jolie Pastor. Come here, Cousin Mary, and see what fair ripe peaches there are on the tree, on the very same bough that was given to me by Father one day last spring. When it looked so beautiful all in the blow, and I wanted to pluck it, he told me, you know, I might, but that waiting a few months would show the fruit that patience might bring. And as I perceived by the sound of his voice and the look of his eye, it was clearly his choice that it should not be touched. I have now to rejoice that I told him we'd let it remain. For had it been gathered when full in the flower, its blossoms had withered perhaps in an hour, and nothing on earth could have given the power that would make them flourish again. But now of a fruit so delicious and sweet, I've enough for myself and my playmates to treat. And they tell me besides that the kernels secrete what if planted will make other trees. For the shell will come open to let down the root, and sprout shall spring up, whence the branches will shoot. There'll be buds, leaves, and blossoms, and then comes the fruit, such beautiful peaches as these. And nature, they say, like a mighty machine, has a wheel in a wheel, which, if aught comes between, it ruins her work, as it might have been seen, had it not given patience this trial. From this I'll be careful to keep it in mind, when the blossoms I love, that there lingers behind a better reward that the trusting shall find for a trifling self-denial. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Broken Pipe by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Jolie Pastor. Come here, little Willie, why, what is the trouble? I've broke my new pipe, Ma, I can't make a bubble. Well, don't weep for that, child, but brighten your face, and tell how this grievous disaster took place. Why, Puss came along, and I said, now she'll think that white frothy water is milk she may drink. So I set it before her, and plunged her mouth in, when up came both claws, and clung fast to my chin. Then I gave her a blow with my pipe, and it flew at once into pieces. Oh, what shall I do? I can't make a bubble. I wish naughty Kit had been a mile off. See, there's blood on me yet. I'm sorry, my boy, yet your loss is but just. You first deceived Pussy and trifled with trust. In this, when you failed, you compelled her, and thence the wound on your face from poor Kit's self-defense. Then, when you grow cruel and beat her, you know your pipe and yourself fared worse for the blow. Let this lesson teach you hence never to stoop to make man or brute that may trust you a dupe. And when you have power, it should not be abused, oppressing the weaker, nor strength be misused. For often unkindness returns whence it came, and ever deceit must be followed by shame. Remember this, William, and here end your sorrow. I'll buy you a pipe to blow bubbles tomorrow. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Vivie Vain by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Joshua Burnworth. Miss Vain was all given to dress, too fond of gay clothing, and so she'd gad about town, just to show a new gown, as a trained band their colour to show. Her head being empty and light, whene'er she obtained a new hat, with pride in her hair she'd go round, here and there, for all whom she knew to see that. Her folly was chiefly in this: more highly she valued fine looks than virtue or truth, or devoting her youth to usefulness, friendship, or books. Her passion for show was unchecked, and therefore it happened one day, arrayed in bright hues, and with new hat and shoes, Miss Vain walked abroad for display. She took the most populous streets, to cause but aversion in those who saw how she'd prinked, and to bystanders winked, while the boys cried, "Halloo, there she goes!" It chanced that, in passing one way, she came near a pool and a green, with fence close and high, and as Vivie drew nigh, a donkey stood near it unseen. He put his mouth over its top the moment she came by his place, and gave a loud bray in her ear, when away she sprang, shrieked, and fell on her face. She thought she was swallowed alive, a while upon earth lying flat, and the terrible sound seemed to furrow the ground she embraced in her fine gown and hat. She gathered herself up and ran, yet heeded not whither or whence, to flee from the roar that continued to pour behind her from over the fence. In passing a slope near the pool, she slipped and rolled down to its brim. The geese gave a shout, and at length hissed her out of the bounds where they'd gathered to swim. In turning a corner she met abruptly the horns of a cow, that mooed while the cur at the heels turned from her, and aimed at Miss Vain his bow-wow. Then Vivie's bright ribbons and skirt, as she flew, flirted high on the wind. The children at play paused to see one so gay, and all in a flutter behind. A group of glad schoolboys came by. Said they, "So it seems that today Miss Vain carries mocks, at which the dog balks, and that makes sober long ears to bray." And when all bedraggled and pale, poor Vivie approached her own door, she went swift and straight as a dart through the gate, abhorring the gay gear she wore. She sat down and thought of the scene, with humiliation and tears, the words and the noise of the brutes and the boys were echoing still in her ears. She reasoned, and came at the cause, resolving that cause to remove, and thence her desire was for modest attire, and her heart and her mind to improve. And soon all who knew her before remarked on the change and the gain, in mind and in mien, and in dress, that were seen in the once flashy Miss Vivie Vain. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. August 17th, 2017. Columbus, Ohio.
The Mockingbird by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Jolie Pastor. A mockingbird was he, in a bushy blooming tree, embosomed by the foliage and flower. And there he sat and sang, till all around him rang with sounds from out the merry mimic's bower. The little satirist piped, chattered, shrieked, and hissed. He then would moan and whistle, cock, and caw. Then carol, drawl, and croak, as if he'd pass a joke on every other winged one he saw. Together he would catch a gay and plaintive snatch, and mingle notes of half the feathered throng, for well the mocker knew of everything that flew, to imitate the manner and the song. The other birds drew near and paused a while to hear how well he gave their voices and their airs, and some became amused, while some, disturbed, refused to own the sounds the others said were theirs. The sensitive were shocked to find their honors mocked by one so pert and voluble as he. They knew not if 'twas done in earnest or in fun, and fluttered off in silence from the tree. The silliest grew vain to think a strong or sane of theirs, however weak or loud or hoarse, was worthy to be heard, repeated by the bird, for of his wit they could not feel the force. The charitable said, "Poor fellow, if his head is turned or cracked, or has no talent left, but feels the want of powers, and plumes itself from ours, why, we shall not be losers by the theft." The haughty said, "He thus, it seems, would mimic us, and steal our songs to pass them for his own. But if he only quotes in honor of our notes, why, we are quite as honored, let alone." The wisest said, "If foe or friend, we still may know by him wherein our greatest failing lies. So let us not be moved, since first to be improved by everything becomes the truly wise." End of poem. This is a recording in the public domain.
The Bird's Home by Hannah Flagg Gould, recorded for LibriVox.org by Jude. Oh, where is thy home, sweet bird, with the song and the bright glossy plume? I'll tell thee where I rest, if thou wilt not rob my nest I built among the sweet apple bloom. But what's in thy nest, bright bird? What's there in the snug downy cell? If thou wilt not rob the tree, nor go too near to see my quiet little home, I will tell. Oh, I will not thy trust betray, but closely thy secret I will keep. I've 3 little tender things that have never used their wings. I left them there at home, fast asleep. Then why art thou here, my bird, away from thy young helpless brood? To pay thee with a song, just to let me pass along, nor harm me as I look for their food. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Bird Uncaged by Hannah Flagg Gould, recorded for LibriVox.org by Jude. She opened the cage, and away there flew a bright little bird, as a short adieu. It hastily whistled and passed the door, and felt that its sorrowful hours were o'er. An anthem of freedom it seemed to sing, to utter its joy for an outspread wing, that now it could sport in the boundless air, and might go any and everywhere. And Anna rejoiced in her bird's delight, but her eye was wet as she marked its flight, till this was the song that she seemed to hear, and merrily warbled, it dried the tear. I had a mistress, and she was kind, in all but keeping her bird confined. She ministered food and drink to me, but oh, I was pining for liberty. My fluttering bosom she loved to smooth, while the heart within it she could not soothe. I sickened and longed for the wild wood breeze, my feathery kindred and fresh green trees. A prisoner there with the useless wing, I looked with sorrow on everything. I lost my voice and forgot my song, and mourned in silence the whole day long. But I will go back with a mellower pipe, and sing when the cherries are round and ripe, on the topmost bough as I lock my feet, to help myself in my leafy seat. My merriest notes shall there be heard, to draw her eye to her franchised bird. The burden then of my song shall be earth for the wingless, but air for me. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Dame Biddy by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Aaron Carlo. Dame Biddy. Dame Biddy abode in a coop, because it so chanced that Dame Biddy had round her a family group of chicks young and helpless and giddy. And when she had freedom to roam, she fancied the life of a ranger, and led off her brood far from home, to fall into mischief or danger. She'd trail through the grass to be mown, and call all her children to follow, and scratch up the seeds that were sown, then lie in their places and wallow. She'd go where the corn in the hill its first little blade had been shooting, and try by the strength of her bill to learn if the kernel was rooting. And when she went out on a walk of pleasure through thicket and brambles, the covetous eye of a hawk delighted in marking her rambles. "I spy," to himself he would say, "a prize of which I'll be the winner." So down he would pounce on his prey, and bear off a chicken for dinner. The poor frightened matron that heard the cry of her youngling and dying would scream at the merciless bird that high with his booty was flying. But shrieks could not ease her distress, nor grief her lost darling recover. She now had a chicken the less for acting the part of a rover. And there lay the feathers all torn and flying one way and another, that still her dear child might have worn had she been more wise as a mother. Her owner then thought he must teach Dame Biddy a little subjection, and cooped her up out of the reach of hawking with time for reflection, and, throwing a net o'er a pile of brushwood that near her was lying, he hoped to its meshes to wile the fowler that o'er her was flying. For hawk, not forgetting his fare, and having a taste to renew it, sailed round near the coop high in the air, with cruel intention to view it. The owner then said, "Master Hawk, if you love my chickens so dearly, come down to my yard for a walk, that you may address them more nearly." But no, thought the sharp-taloned foe of Biddy, my circuit is higher. If I to his premises go, 'twill be when I see he's not nigh her. The farmer strewed barley, and told the chickens the brush to run under, and left them while hawking, growing bold, thus tempted, came near for his plunder. As closer and closer he drew, with appetite stronger and stronger, he found he'd but one thing to do, and plunged to defer it no longer. But now he had come to a pause, at once in the network entangled, while through it his head and his claws in hopeless vacuity dangled. The chicks saw him hang overhead, where they for their barley had huddled, and all in a flutter they fled, and soon through the coop holes had scuttled. The farmer came out to his snare, he saw the bold captive was in it, and said, "If this play be unfair, remember I did not begin it." He then put a cork in his beak, the airy assassin disarming, and spurred him and rendered him weak by blunting each talent for harming. And into the coop he was thrown, the chickens hid under their mother, for he by his feathers was known as he who had murdered their brother. Dame Biddy, beholding his plight, determined to show him no quarter, in action gave vent to her spite, as motherly tenderness taught her. She shouted and blustered, and then attacked the poor captive unfriended, and you, who have witnessed a hen in anger, may guess how it ended. She made him a touching address, if pecking and scratching could do it, till, sinking in silent distress, he perished before she got through it. We would not, however, convey a thought like approving the fury that gave in this summary way punition without judge or jury. Whenever thus given, it tends to lessen the angry bestower. The fowl that inflicts it descends, the featherless biped still lower. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Envious Lobster by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Aaron Carlo. The Envious Lobster. A lobster from the water came, and saw another just the same in form and size, but gaily clad in scarlet clothing, while she had no other raiment to her back than her old suit of greenish black. "So ho!" she cried, "'tis very fine. Your dress was yesterday like mine, and in the mud below the sea you lived a crawling thing like me. But now, because you've come ashore, you've grown so proud that what you wore, your strong old suit of bottle green, you think improper to be seen. To tell the truth, I don't see why you should be better dressed than I. And I should like a suit of red as bright as yours, from feet to head. I think I'm quite as good as you, and might be clothed in scarlet, too." "Will you be boiled," her owner said, "to be arrayed in glowing red? Come here, my discontented miss, and hear the scalding kettle hiss. Will you go in and there be boiled, to have your dress so old and soiled exchanged for one of scarlet hue?" "Yes," cried the lobster, "that I'll do, and twice as much if needs must be, to be as gaily clad as she." Then in she made a fatal dive, and never more was seen alive. Now, if you ever chance to know of one as fond of dress and show as that vain lobster, and withal as envious, you'll perhaps recall to mind her folly, and the plight in which she reappeared to sight. She had obtained a bright array, but for it thrown herself away. Her life and death were best untold, but for the moral they unfold. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Kit with the Rose by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Aaron Carlo in San Clemente, California. Kit with the Rose. A rose tree stood in the parlor when Kit came frolicking by, so up went her feet on the window seat to a rose that had caught her eye. She gave it a cuff, and it trembled beneath her ominous paw, and while it shook with a threatening look, she coveted what she saw. Thought she, "What a beautiful toss-ball, if I could but give it a snap! Now all are out north, thinking about their rose, or the least mishap." She twisted the stem and she twirled it, and seizing the flower it bore, with the timely aid of her teeth she made a leap to the parlor floor. And over the carpet she tossed it, all fresh in its morning bloom, till shattered and rent its leaves were sent to every side of the room. At length, with her sport grown weary, she laid herself down to sun, inclining to doze, forgetting the rose and the mischief she had done. By and by her young mistress entered, and uttered a piteous cry, when she saw the fate of what had so late delighted her watchful eye. But where was the one who had spoiled it, concealing his guilty face? She had not a clue whereby to pursue the rogue to his lurking place. Thought Kit, "I'll keep still till 'tis over, and none will suspect it was I." For the puss awoke when her mistress spoke, and she well understood the cry. But, meowing at length for her dinner, Kit's mouth confessed the whole truth. It opened so wide that her mistress spied a rose-leaf pierced by her tooth. Then Kit was expelled from the parlor, all covered with shame, and those inclined like her in secret to err should remember Kit with the rose. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Storm in the Forest by Hannah Flagg Gould, read for LibriVox.org by Jolie Pastor. The storm in the forest is rending and sweeping, while tree after tree bows its stately green head. The flowers beneath them are bending and weeping, and leaves torn and trembling all round them are spread. The bird that had roamed till she thinks her benighted, dismayed hastens back to her home in the wood, and flags not a wing until her bosom affrighted has laid its warm down o'er her own little brood. And they, since that fond one so quickly has found them to shelter their heads from the rain and the blast, shall fearless repose while the bolts burst around them, and lie calm and safe till the darkest is past. Hast thou too not felt when the tempest was drearest, and rending thy covert or shaking thy rest, thine own blessed angel that moment the nearest, thy screen in his pinion, thy shield in his breast? When clouds frowned the darkest and perils beset thee, till each prop of earth seemed to bend or to break, did e'er thy good angel turn off and forget thee? The mother her little ones then may forsake. Ah, no, thou shalt feel thy protector the surer, the sun in returning more cheering and warm, and all things around thee seem fresher and purer, and touched with new glory because of the storm. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Uprooted Elm by Hannah Flagg Gould, read for LibriVox.org by Jolie Pastor. Alas, alas, my good old tree, a fatal change is passed on thee, and now thine aged form I see all helpless, lying low. The rending tempest in its flight mid darkness of the wintry night hath struck thee, passing in its might, and felled thee at a blow. And nevermore the blooming spring shall to thy boughs rich verdure bring, or her gay birds to flit and sing where their first plumage grew. For thou so long, so fondly made my eyes delight, my summer shade, here as a lifeless king art laid in state for all to view. Thy noble trunk and reverend head, defined on that cold snow-white bed, and those old arms so widely spread, thy hopelessness declare. Thy roots in earth concealed so long, that struck so deep with hold so strong, upturned with many a broken prong, are quivering high in air. But yestereve I saw thee stand, with lofty front, with aspect grand, where thou hadst braved the ruthless hand of time, and spread and towered, and stood the rain, the hail, the blast, till more than 100 years had passed, to fall so suddenly at last, forever overpowered. Yet while I sadly ponder o'er what now thou art and wast before, were sighs to rise and tears to pour like summer winds and rain, not all the sighs and drops of grief could bring to thee one bud or leaf. Thou liest so like a stricken chief, by one swift arrow slain. But mayst thou prove an emblem true of what the spoiler's hand shall do with one who pensive here would view a shadowy type in thee. Let not the conqueror piecemeal slay with power by power and slow decay, but strike, and all in ashes lay. Farewell, my good old tree. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Through the Clouds by Hannah Flagg Gould, read for LibriVox.org by Jolie Pastor. Through the clouds that veil the sky, come, O sun, and sweetly smile. Show thy glory to mine eye, so my heart may beam the while. Come and chase this day of night, for the world is sadly dim. To thy blessed face of light, let my spirit sing her hymn. Now in silence and alone, I, to pass the heavy hour, sit and fancy nature's moan after thy reviving power. Blasts of wildered, wandering air, asking where thy face can be, chill and cheerless everywhere, sighing, wailing, seek for thee. Mourning o'er the earth is spread, bud and flower look pale with grief. Sick the plant has hung its head, dullness weighs on every leaf. Not a bird is heard to sing, reft of thine inspiring ray. As a lyre of every string, each from sight is hid away. Sable clouds that veil the blue of the skies their shadows throw, here until their sombre hue gives a cast to all below. Come, O sun, and through the gloom let thy beaming vesture fall, bringing music, joy, and bloom, spread thy mantle o'er us all. What were there on earth to love, what were beauteous, bright, or dear, wert thou not so true above, and thy holy influence here. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
My Rose Tree by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org. My rose tree, oh, my beauteous rose tree, after have I longed to know how thy tender leaves were moulded, how I have watered, sunned, and trained thee, and have watched thee many an hour. Yet I never could discover how a bug becomes a flower. So last night I thought about thee on my pillow, till at last I was gone in quiet slumber, and a dream before me passed. In it I beheld my rose tree, stripped of flower, and bud and leaf, but thy naked stalk and branches filled me with methought. I wept to see thee spoiled of all that made thee dear, till a band of smiling angels, mildly shining, however near, gently as they gathered round thee, all in silence, one of them laid his soft fair finger on thee, pulling leaves from out of the stem. One by one thy wings he furnished with a dress of foliage green, while another angel followed, bringing buds and leaves between. Then came one the buds to open, he their skill in rolls unsheathed, while the one who tinned the roses through their loosened foldings breathed. Then the angel of the odors filled each golden-bottomed cell, till between the parting petals free on air the fragrance fell. Lifting their shining pinions, quick the angels passed from sight, leaving, where aloft they vanished, but a stream of fading light. There I heard sweet strains of music, and the voice far above, dying in the azure distance, naming thee a gift of love. And my rose tree stood before me, finished thus by angel hands, perfect in its blossom and fragrance, beautiful as now it stands. Hence, whenever I behold thee, I shall think of angels too, and the countless works of goodness they descend on earth to do, all unseen and silent, round us their careful watches keep. Whether we may wake or slumber, guardian angels never sleep. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Infant Baptist by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. And the child grew and waxed strong in spirit, and was in the deserts until the day of his showing unto Israel. Luke 1:80. Child amid the honeyed flowers, passing life's bright morning hours, playing in the silver rills where they bathe Judea's hills, looking with an earnest eye at the wild bird flitting by, infant of the joyous heart, canst thou tell me who thou art? Thou, whose little hand in play hurls the clustered grapes away, while thou lov'st to watch the bee, or to win a lamb to thee, and to see the fleecy flock resting by the shadowy rock, knowest thou, tender, beauteous boy, what's thine errand, whence thy joy? 'Twas thy name that Gabriel spoke by the altar, while the smoke from thy father's incense rolled, when thy being was foretold. Thou art come, the promised one, as the day spring to the sun, soon to usher in new light through the realms of death and night. Heavenly innocence is now marked upon thy peaceful brow, God's own Spirit filleth thee, sainted babe, for thou art he who before the Lamb shall go, crying that the world may know he hath life to give the dead in the blood he comes to shed. Though from nature wild and rude come thy raiment, rest, and food, nightly o'er thy desert sleep angels shall their vigils keep. Through the wilderness by day they will guard and lead thy way, till to Israel thou appear, showing heaven's mild kingdom near. High and glorious then the part for thine eye and hand and heart, when thy feet on Jordan's side feel the waters as they glide. Thou the Son of God shalt see, come to be baptized of thee. Hear him named, and see the dove resting on him from above. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Hymn to Solitude by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org. Hymn to Solitude. O solitude, holy and calm, from tumult and crowds breaking free, I fly sick and sad, for the balm I find given only by thee. Too oft from thy peace I depart, kind guardian, friend of my soul, and then bring an earth-wounded heart for thee to bind up and make whole. My spirit now worn and oppressed, her wings in thy bosom hath furled, to sink as a bird in its nest, away from a cold, faithless world. Alarmed at the shade and the chill that o'er me its visions have cast, I here would lie lowly and still, till sorrow's dark night hours are past. And then from the dust may I rise, to mount as the lark from her sod, and sing as the morn of my skies appears in the smile of my God. O solitude, sacred and sweet, whilst thus in thy bosom I lie, earth's baubles are under my feet, my heart and its treasures on high. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Bible in the Fields by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. I love to take this holy book In summer's balmy hours, to study it beside the brook, Or by the trees and flowers. For here I read about the God who made this world so fair, The skies, the stream, the grassy sod, and bloom that scents the air. The birds flit around and sweetly sing of Him who feeds them all, Who lifts the towering eagle's wing and marks the sparrow's fall. The violet from its soft green bed to speak His goodness to, presents its tender purple head baptized with silvery dew. And here the busy bee I view, as she comes swiftly by, and seems to ask if she should do more work or good than I. Her waxen house betimes to build I see her wisely bent, and then with bread and honey filled to have it, still intent. The bees I find their sweets supplied in wild Judea's land, to feed the Baptist when he cried, "Heaven's kingdom is at hand." And when our Saviour from the grave had asked his friends for meat, He ate the honeycomb they gave, and showed his hands and feet. This volume of His will revealed I here can read within. Behold the lilies of the field, They neither toil nor spin. And yet the King was not arrayed In glory like to them. Their Maker's power is so displayed In flower and leaf and stem. And He sat on the mountain's side, Who spake these blessed words. Before Him flowery fields spread wide, Around were trees and birds. The fleecy flocks that sport so free On hill and valley deep, I love to watch, and here I see 'Tis written, "Feed my sheep." For thus I seem to keep in view And feel how near I am To the dear Friend of children, Who has named Himself the Lamb. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Hoary Head by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org. The hoary head is crown of glory, if it be found in the way of righteousness. Aged man, with locks so hoary, high estate dost thou possess. They appear thy crown of glory in the way of righteousness. Jewels, not of man's preparing, form the shining diadem. Thou art from thy sovereign wearing, the gods' own fingers silvered them. Thine are honours, proved and heightened by a gift of lengthened years, and afflictions, furnace brightened, tried by cares and washed by tears. Like thy Master, meek and lowly, though a thorny earth has trod, with thy priest a high and holy temple of the living God. Aged saint, thy form is bending, sere and withered to the tomb, by the Spirit upward tending, budded for immortal bloom. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
My Father by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Scott Kelly. Recorded on October 2nd, 2017 in Boston, Massachusetts. In the evening time there shall be light. Sacred the hour when thou, my sainted Father, wast of thy worn-out, sinking clay undressed, softly by his pale hand, who comes to gather time's weary pilgrims home to joy and rest. Noiseless and clear, and holiest of the seven, that day when thy last earthly sun went down, thy Sabbath, closing here, began in heaven, while thy meek brow changed ashes for a crown. Hush was the evening, not a zephyr swelling, heaved the tree blossom or the woodbine leaves. Silent the bird that sang about our dwelling, slept where she nestled, close beneath its eaves. Cloudless the moon and stars above were shining, when time's last ray to thy mild eye was shed, while death's cold touch, life's silver cord untwining, brought his chill night dew on thy reverend head. 90 full years of pilgrimage completing, here did thou linger till one Sabbath more. 'Twas holy time, thy pure heart stilled its beating. Pain, work, and warfare were forever o'er. Meet hour for one, obedient, meek, and lowly, wont, by command of heaven, the day to keep, called at its evening to the high and holy, peaceful in Jesus, thus to fall asleep. Sweetly thy form, that seemed a blissful dreamer, told by its features how the Spirit smiled, through the dark, shadowy veil, by thy Redeemer, led to his mansion like a little child. Nature's full hand, that, on thy natal morning, clothed earth to greet thee in the flowers of May, brought them renewed, thy burial spot adorning, when 80 had rolled away. Now, while the robin, past the window flying, leads off her young, forsaking here her nest, constant the wild bird, where thy dust is lying, sings her sweet hymn, a requiem to its rest. There has it joined the ashes of my mother, faithful, rewedded to its only bride. And there thy latest born, my younger brother, thy fond heart's care, sleeps slowly by her side. Yet, angel father, over Jordan's water, is it so far that now thou canst not see, back to the shore where lonely stands thy daughter, sprinkling its rocks and thorns with tears for thee? Art thou so distant, visions of thy glory may not be granted to her mortal sight, when she so long watched o'er thy head so hoary, soothing its pillow till that mournful night? Since here so oft, in pain, the path of duty, thy patient feet with steady steps have trod, safe now they walk the golden streets in beauty, and oh, thy blessed eyes in peace see God. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
A Sage Hath Departed by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org. The Lord from his cloudy pavilion hath spoken, the soul to himself and its dust to the clod. The cord he hath loosed and the golden bowl broken, who formed them so precious. Be still, it is God. A sage hath departed, the cities sit weeping. From land unto land does the gloom spread away, the seas give their wail to the winds o'er them sweeping. The spirit that spanned them hath passed from the clay. His form, pale and cold, the dark mansion encloses, around it philanthropy, science, and art. Their tears for their friend, as in death he reposes, shower warm o'er them hand, and the head, and the heart. But there, while affection her tribute is giving, the beauty, the grandeur, the power of his mind, the grave cannot hide, in his deeds he is living. He shines in the light he diffuses for mankind. That mind, as a guide that trod paths on the ocean, its marks o'er the billowy desert to place, while man as a heart and the deep is in motion, the wide world shall Hannah, the mariner, trace. The stars in their courses to grasp and to measure, his eye loved the blue arch of ether to climb. His soul rose behind them to lay up the treasure more bright than the stars, more enduring than time. And here, while the soaring Salem is shrouded in weeds for the sun of her pride and her love, 'tis his to behold, with his vision unclouded, the glories unveiled of the Salem above, with bowditch inscribed for the whole earth's revering, in letters of light to each point beaming round. A monument formed of his work now is rearing its head, here with clusters of planets 'tis crowned. End of poem. Read for LibriVox.org.
The Burial of Schiller by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Scott Kelly. The still and solemn, shadowy hour when Saturday in Sabbath dies, over Weimar hangs, with clouds that lower and veil, and black the moon in skies. Lo, from yon mansion lights appear, pale glimmering through the midnight gloom. A confined form is on the bier, and thence borne forward to the tomb. The funeral train, how sad and slow, they follow that cold sleeping clay, while sighs and sobs of bitter woe sound deep along the silent way. And now the open grave beside that dismal bier, the bearers rest, and heavier waves of sorrow's tide roll mighty over each mourner's breast. From him who slumbers in the shroud, as tremblingly they lift the pall, the moon rends off her veil of cloud, and over him lets her lustre fall. She beams her silvery soft adieu, and is again in darkness hid, as if affrighted thus to view the name on that dread coffin lid. For 'tis her lover, now no more, her friend whom they to dust consign, and never again is she to pour her light for eyes like his to shine. 'Tis done, the fearful final rite, too sacred for the glare of day, has passed beneath the shadowy night. Earth has closed over Shelias' clay. The heavens in thunder groan, they weep in torrents over his bed, and searching, fiery bolts are thrown, as if to find and wake the dead. These funeral honors, so sublime, befit him well to whom they're paid, and, at the birth of holy time, 'twas meet his dust at rest be laid. His spirit, bright with heavenly fire, has burned its way through mortal strife, and gained its high, intense desire to solve the mystery of life. It is the budding month of May, the passing storm will call the bloom, a tribute nature soon will pay to dress her deathless poet's tomb. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. A Funeral Hymn for President Harrison by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Scott Kelly. A woe-stricken people, in sorrow we gather, the dawn of our glory, our hopes full in bloom, are changed with the face of our chieftain, our father, to sable and cypress to hang round his tomb. While pale in the shroud lies the patriot sleeping, a light that for earth is no longer to burn. Removed from its place, a sad nation is weeping, and dark where it shone falls the shade of an urn. When loud through the land, hill and valley and mountain, were sounding his name and reflecting its beam, the death angel's wand opened grief's bitter fountain, to quench their warm joys with its far-flowing streams. Alas, that the spoiler so early must sever a tie which the hearts of a country had bound to him who is gone and forever, to join the bright hosts who their Saviour surround. Our Father in heaven, yet grant us another, like him who has left us as orphans below. O did not the sage of his dear younger brother, when called to thy presence, his mantle bestow? To thee, who from darkness thy children hast stricken, we cry with our wound, asking balm from the tree, whose leaves heal the nation. Hear us and quicken our wandering feet to return unto thee. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Dirge for Felicia Hemans by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Scott Kelly. They hovered around her, an angel band. They listened her notes to hear. The voice was one of their own bright land. But strained was the harp in their sister's hand, with marks of the falling tear. She saw she had wreathed it with deathless flowers, while many a beauteous leaf, that looked like the growth of their heavenly bowers, was pale with the shade of her darksome hours, or wet with the dews of grief. Then gently from under her hand they took her harp, and laid it aside. The tremulous chords, at her parting look, in the farewell sweep of her fingers, shook and snapped as her numbers died. The angels had whispered of joys above, and wooed her with them to soar, till spreading her wings like a peaceful dove, her spirit arose for a world of love, to wander on earth no more. Britannia, drop thy heaviest tear. O weep, it will be forgiven, that fain we had kept in her bondage here, a soul so pure, and a voice so dear, had longer withheld from heaven. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. She died as dawned her natal day, by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Scott Kelly. She died as dawned her natal day, amid the buds and flowers of May. Her spirit left the beauteous clay, and death's deep slumber here, and mounting up her starry way, attained that holier sphere, where falls no night over birth daylight, no sorrow brings a tear. The joy and glory of the skies with radiance fill her heavenly eyes, where thornless flowers around her rise, and founts that never shall fail, while here her form so lowly lies, all silent, cold, and pale, where dews distill, and night winds chill, moan through the shadowy veil. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Written in an album, after the lines of a deceased friend, by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Scott Kelly. Close to the lines that her dear hand had traced, who took so long an angel's form on high, after her name is my memorial placed, for thee, my friend, and it shall tell thee why. I find a sweetness where her spirit breathed, a sacred halo round her name is thrown. So, with the flowers that here her fingers wreathed, to borrow life from them, atwine my own. Fresh in thy heart and mine her memory lives, fragrant and fair, and thornless in its bloom. Here with the precious odor that it gives, I fain my simple offering would perfume. Then, whatsoever the change that comes to me, though death or duty put me far away, these silent leaves may still unfold to thee the wish of one who was thy friend today. Peace be to thee, long life, and joy, and health, the blessed allotment of thy sojourn here, the portion of a child of God, thy wealth, when time must close, and earth shall disappear. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Sovereign of Babylon by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Scott Kelly. The monarch has opened his banqueting hall for his 1,000 lords and his ladies all. The sparkling wine to each guest is poured, and mirth swells high at the festal board, where none hath a heart more careless and light than he whose glory must end to-night. With the cup and the revel the king grows bold. He calls for the vessels of silver and gold, the spoils his idolatrous father brought, mid the impious deeds which that proud one wrought, from the temple of God at Jerusalem, that he and his nobles may drink from them. Each sacred vessel they fill and raise to a laughing lip as it speaks the praise of the gods of metal, of wood and stone, but mocks at the name of the Holy One, whose finger this hour shall come so near, that lip will quiver and blanch with fear. Monarch, what's there on the lighted wall that can fix thy gaze and thy spirit appall? Why is thy countenance changed, O King? Is it one of thy gods this awe can bring, which makes thy knees together to smite, thine eye so wild, and thy cheek so white? A hand! A hand! It hath written a line, and who will the terrible words define? A chain of gold shall encircle his neck, a venture of scarlet his form shall deck, and the third, as ruler, shall be that seer, with honor and power throughout Chaldea. Not all the wise and the learned of thine, poor impotent one, shall explain that line, but the captive of Judah, him thy queen, has bid thee summon, let him be seen. His eye prophetic receives its sight from the being who caused the hand to write. The slave is brought to the potentate, to spurn his gifts, but to read his fate. To whom 'tis inscribed on the lofty wall, Thou art weighed, found wanting, and now must fall. Thy kingdom is numbered, the Persian and Mede shall hence to thy throne and thy power succeed. Thy come, the foeman, nor sword nor flight shall win for that monarch the morning light. The haughty head where the crown was set, in dust is pillowed, with gore is wet. Yet, who are trusting in honor and gold, look at him now, and your strength behold. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Deer Stricken by Torchlight by Hannah Flagg Gould, read for LibriVox.org by Aaron Carlo in San Clemente, California. The Deer Stricken by Torchlight. The arrow is fast in his side, and still through the forest they follow the poor stricken deer that has nowhere to hide, and dared not to pause where the cool waters glide, when, leaping the brook, he would almost have died, one draught from its ripple to swallow. That deep-planted arrow! Oh, how can he bear the anguish of feeling it quiver, when shook by the branches, the wave, or the air, as forward he bounds, but without heeding where, from thicket to crag with the force of despair, to plunge in the cold sweeping river. They hunted him hard, till the sun in the west had sunk while their aim he evaded. At evening he sought a calm refuge of rest, and dropped from pursuit by his terrors oppressed, beneath the close branches in verdure full dressed, by night and the covert o'ershaded. But the poor dear, they had doomed him to die, for near the green turf where he laid him, They lighted the torch, and they brandished it high. It glared through the boughs on his tender black eye, that fatally shone for the death shaft to fly. His beauty, his beaming betrayed him. He cannot by flying now loosen the dart, the end of his tortures to quicken, by letting the life in one blood gush depart. He seeks a retreat like the warm wounded heart, when lone, slow, and silent, the victim of art, it dies as a deer that is stricken. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Death of Sapphira by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Scott Kelly. Sapphira, Sapphira, awake! Alas, she is gone in her sleep. That but the archangel can break, for life hath no slumber so deep. 'Tis death, his pale ashes are cast on those withered lips, where but now an insult to heaven has passed. His dumbness hath followed the vow. A bolt from above, swift and sure, hath blasted the pride of the clay, the spirit in boldness secure, and guilt hath been stricken away. O child of delusion, to stand, the chosen of Jesus among, to cover the fraud of thy hand, by falsehood to him of thy tongue. How vain the deceit of the heart, to shroud in a mantle so frail, its perfidy thus by its art, to think from omniscience to veil. Lost woman, but 3 hours before, the form of thy partner in sin was borne, wan and cold, from the door, where thou didst so rashly come in. And thee, who had carried him out, the clods over his bosom to lay, were waiting the threshold about, to bear thee to darkness away. Sapphira, could mercy restore, or pity thy spirit recall, to light up its dwelling once more, it should not thus helplessly fall. But mercy besought thee in vain, from death's awful brink to recede, to shun the despair and the pain, where she is forbidden to plead. And pity's warm teardrops must roll, the more that she cannot relume the clay whence a self-wounded soul hath rushed to a suicide's doom. How potent, how maddening the love, O gold, of a mortal must be, to challenge an arm from above, to stake earth and heaven for thee. For justice to judgment will call, and who shall their coming abide, when wrath the most fearful of all, the wrath of the Lamb, is defied. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. William at Sea by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Scott Kelly. Recorded on October 2nd, 2017 in Boston, Massachusetts. Whilst thou art away, where the proud waves are swelling, beneath thy light bark, ever mindful of thee, the days of thine absence at home we are telling, and counting the hours of our William at sea. And thou, whether cradled to sleep by the billow, or watching the sport of the spray and the foam, if pensive on deck, or in dreams on thy pillow, We know us thy soul wrapped with visions of home. We know when the sun mounts the east in his glory, or smiles a good night at the west he descends, thy heart pointing back to itself tells the story of mansion paternal in kindred and friends. And when at the morning and evening devotion, while bending with offerings of praise and of prayer, to God we commend thee afar on the ocean, we feel thou art kneeling for us to him there. While months on the water, long months are before thee, the two fluid worlds thou art tossing between, the cold deeply low, and the skies bending o'er thee, alone by their changes will vary the scene. Or, if a bright isle on the flood waste upstarting, rude ocean's green oasis, rest thy glad eye, 'twill fade as a cloud, as a phantom departing, 'twill sink in the circle that bound sea and sky. Should some white-winged ship, with her light pennon streaming, thy heart on thy watery desert to cheer, arise like a star through night's solitude beaming, with meteor swiftness she'll soon disappear. And when the coy sea-bird, a wild ether sailor, comes near on her passage from one language more, oh, how wilt thou long, ere she flies thee, to hail her, to ask whither bound, and the tidings from shore. Yet, while so unstable, so pathless and lonely, where thy desolate deep may be found, 'tis marked with the impress of Deity only, his merciful arms will thy frailty surround. 'Tis grand, 'tis ennobling, while feeling and knowing his presence is power, and his banner is love, to look from that flood to the firmament showing bright shadowings forth of his glory above. And William, through tempest and terrors assail thee, though clouds rolled on clouds hide the stars and the sun, thy soul's chosen friend never, never will fail thee, winds and waves, but obey the omnipotent one. While o'er and around thee thick darkness may gather, when wide yawns the deep, and the surges swell high, thy spirit may hear the kind voice of her Father, still whispering, be of good cheer, it is I. And safe may he bear thee through perils and changes, besetting his course who so wildly roam. Then speed thy return from the land of the Ganges, from Pagod and Panem, dear William, come home. Come home, where the eyes beam through tears to behold thee, where arms open wide to receive thee will be, and promise, while yet to the heart they enfold thee, to be, never after, our William at sea. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. My Portrait by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Scott Kelly. Well, thou art done, cold, speechless thing. Yet in thy silence, with the power, a crowd of feelings deep to bring, unknown until the present hour. But wherefore done, to life so true? Not human pride, nor vanity, could ask the artist hand to do, and show the world a deed like thee. And was it simple most, or kind, to have upon the canvas cast my semblance, thus to leave behind my shadow, when myself am past. I know not if another eye will ever weep beside thee more than mine does now. I know not why it never dropped such tears before. I view thee as a piece composed to last, when I have passed from sight, when time and earth to me are closed, to be in time an earthly light. Perhaps 'tis this that makes me weep, the thought that I shall pass away, and those who have thee then to keep may glance at thee and still be gay. But why should grief be felt by me, for fear that others will not grieve? And what to others then will be a shade of life that I may leave? Still, from their deep mysterious spring, gush up these hot, resistless tears, while thou, cold, heartless, stoic thing, dost wear a smile that's set for years. Years! Ah, by then, when years shall wipe from being every line of thee, the spirit which thy prototype enshrined shall live eternally. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Widow's Only Son by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Scott Kelly. She wrapped her in her sable cloak, and walked beside the sea, but seldom of her sorrows spoke, too full of grief was she. 'Twas this that made her heart so sad, to view the ocean wide. The only son that widow had went out to sea and died. And then, in that great rolling deep, with solemn tearful eyes, his messmates lowered him down to sleep, till all the dead shall rise. But where, among those waters vast, with ceaseless fall and swell, her child to that repose had passed, the mother none could tell. She therefore questioned wave on wave, as up they heaved to shore, if they had rolled across his grave, whom she must see no more. And often, when she marked a ship, with full returning sail, the color would forsake her lip, and speech and vision fail. For oh, she thought about the one that spread its canvas white, to waft away her only son, forever from her sight. But still, amid the bitter grief which wrung the widow's heart, her spirit felt the sweet relief that faith and hope impart. She knew her son had ever kept the path to heavenly rest, that, when he sank in death, he slept upon a Saviour's breast. My heavenly Father, she would say, I know the troubled sea, but holds for me the precious clay. My child's at home with thee. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Young Mother by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Scott Kelly. Composed in its beauty, the fair infant slept, but still the young mother sat by it and wept. She rocked not the cradle, she sang not the song, the sleep of her dear only child to prolong. The same fleecy cover, so soft and so warm, that oft wrapped it sleeping, lay light over its form. Its pillow was downy, and smooth was its bed, and yet that sad mother, her fond bosom bled. She knew that no dream of her babe in its rest was now of her voice, or its home on her breast. She caught not the sound, nor the balm of its breath. She knew that her little one slumbered in death. A hand with a pencil was called to portray the features and form of her child as it lay. but false were the hues and the touches of art, to paint the bright image enshrined in her heart. Its lustre was drawn from a glory on high, no pencil of earth could the likeness supply, nor yet on the canvas was mortal to trace the smile the pure spirit had left on that face. The skies, as they opened their guest to receive, had shed on the dust they allured it to leave a sign of the peace, of the joy and the love, encircling for aye the angel above. That mother rose calm with the beautiful clay must be from her sight laid forever away. The gloom left her soul as a cloud leaves the sun. It whispered, "Thy will, O my Father, be done." End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Evening at Andover Seminary Hill by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org. Evening at Andover Seminary Hill. I stood on that majestic height, the lofty hill of Andover, where sacred science holds the light that beams to distant lands from her. For there the school of sages stands, where from afar disciples meet for lore divine in holy bands to sit and learn at wisdom's feet. Within its consecrated walls is kept and taught Jehovah's will, the law whose voice in thunder falls, the gospel whispering, peace, be still. The structures while I viewed around, I seemed to breathe Mount Zion's air. I set my foot with awe profound, as if the ark of God were there. Each earthly care was calm and dumb, for holier thoughts the soul to fill, as if the Shekinah had come to rest upon that reverend hill. A mellow glory crowned its head, and from its foot, and landscape wide, profusely nature's charms were spread, till in the distance vision died. It was a summer's day decline, the drowsy flowers began to close, the breezes lulled that stirred the vine, and all things tended to repose. The sun, adown the western skies, was sinking fast to pass from view, calm as the righteous when it dies to earth, in heaven to live anew. And thence, on edifice and site, his golden smile was backward cast, as if he loved that favored height, to bless the longest and the last. In eastern splendor then arrayed, the full-orbed moon arose serene, through evening's hush and night's cool shade, to throw her lustre o'er the scene. Her silvery vesture wrapped in sheen the stately seminary pile, and fell on tree and flower and green, where pearly dews distilled the while. And through the chapel's crystal shone her light, within the place of prayer, till bright-winged angels from the throne above seemed met and hovering there. It was a scene, it was an hour, a spirit bowed in dust to raise, ennobled, till its every power awaked to joy, was tuned to praise. Clear as that sun, fair as that moon, shall thy dear Sion rise and shine above her foes. Ah, Lord, how soon? When shall the ends of earth be thine? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Hymn of the Parting Class by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org. Hymn of the Parting Class, sung by the theological students. We feel the parting angel's hand in our midst, to lose the band so close, so sacred, and so dear, that long hath bound us, brethren, here. No more within this hallowed place, united at the throne of grace, our prayer shall rise, our voices pour praise, with this our song is o'er. To each we hear the Saviour say, we to his work must hence away, for great the field, the labourers few. What wilt thou, Lord, have us do? O send thy Spirit from above, to fire our hearts with heavenly love, and light our lips with truth, that we may witness, go forth for thee, and may we count all else as loss, to spread the glory of thy cross, from shades and death redeemed, to bring the priceless jewels of our King. On distant islands of the sea, on heathen shores our lot may be, to dying souls, to bear the bread and balm of life on Calvary shed. Yet though our lines be marked afar, and some beneath a foreign star, we may look upward to the Sun of righteousness, and still be one. And when our works of faith are past, in joy we'll meet on high at last, and there in praise our voices swell the song where enters no farewell. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Speckled One by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Scott Kelly. Poor speckled one, none else will deign to waft thy name around, so let me take it on my strain to give it air and sound. Yes, air and sound, low child of earth, for these are oft the things that give a name its greatest worth, its gorgeous plumes and wings. But do not shun me thus, and hop affrighted from my way. Dismiss thy terrors, turn and stop, and hear what I say. Meek, harmless thing, afraid of man? This truly should not be. Then calmly pause, and let me scan my Maker's work in thee. For both of us to him belong, we're fellow creatures here, and power should not be armed with wrong, nor weakness filled with fear. I know it is thy humble lot to burrow in a hole, to have a form I envy not, and that without a soul. In motion, attitude, and limb, I see thee void of grace, and that a look supremely grim reigns over thy solemn face. But thou for this art not to blame, nor should it make us load with obloquy, in scorn and shame, the honest name of Toad. For, though so low on nature's scale, in presence so uncouth, thou never hast to told an evil tale of falsehood or of truth. For, though so low on nature's scale, in presence so uncouth, thou never hast told an evil tale of falsehood or of truth. Thy thoughts are never on malice bent, nor hands to mischief prone, nor yet thy heart to discontent, though spurned and poor and lone. No coveting nor envy burns in thy bright golden eye, that calm and innocently turns on all below the sky. Thy cautious tongue and sober lip no words of folly pass, nor are they found to taste and sip the madness of the glass. Thy frugal meal is often drawn from earth and wood and stone, and when thy means by these are gone, thou seemest to live on none. I hear that in an earthen jar, sealed close, shut up alive, from food, drink, air, sun, moon, and star, thou wilt live and even thrive, and that no moan or murmuring sound will issue from the lid of thy dark dwelling underground, when it is deeply hid. Thou wast as 'twere a secret shelf, whereon is a supply of nourishment within thyself, concealed from mortal eye. Methinks this self-sustaining art 'twere well for us to know, to keep us up in flesh and heart, when outer means grow low. Could we contain our riches thus, on such mysterious shelves, why, none could rob or beggar us, unless we lost ourselves. But ah, my toady, there's the rub, with every human breast, to live as in the cynic's tub, and yet to be self-possessed. For, how to let no boast get round, beyond our tub to show that we in head and heart are sound is one great thing to know. And yet the prison staves and hoop to let no murmur through. However hard we find the coop is greater still to do. Then go, thou sage, resigned and calm, amid thy low estate, and to thy burrow bear the palm for victory over fate. We conquer when we meekly bear the lot we cannot shape, and hug to death the ills and care from which there's no escape. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Moon of a Wintry Night by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. Moon, thou art wading through the gathered snow that o'er us on the fields of ether spread, threatens ere morning to be here below, to lie where our poor mortal feet must tread. Thy face is muffled in a gelid haze that shrouds its lustre like a frozen veil, and kills the twinkling of the starry rays, till all on high looks cheerless, dim, and pale. It gives almost the ague to behold the skies so rayless, yet so far from dark, and when our hearth's white ashes, tired and cold, we stir in vain to find one pleasant spark. Yet by tomorrow's eve our parts may shift, and thou be shining there serene and clear, while we are hedged by many a frigid drift, or sleigh bells shrill may pierce the tingling ear. How dreary then the scene for thy mild beams to light, and for the burning stars to view! The hard ice coating all the lakes and streams, and one dead white where late gay flowerets grew. The naked trees, that stand with buried feet like skeletons, will slender shadows throw on what seems spread as nature's winding sheet, while her slain beauties lie concealed below. Then but to look abroad on vale and hill, where one pale uniform invests the whole, though it should make one's vital current chill, it must not let in winter to the soul. It must not bring a frost upon the heart, to kill affection's tendrils, friendship's root, where vernal shoots and buds should ever start, and grow with summer flowers and autumn fruit; nor cause the streams of thought to be congealed, or pressed beneath incumbent ice grow low, but like the fount that irrigates the field, make bloom and verdure spring where'er they flow. It must not make our shrinking fancies flee, like birds of summer from the cold withdrawn, but wise the mind should, like the prudent bee, on honey banquet, though the flowers are gone. Nor must it strike the hopeful spirit dumb, or quench the beaming of her upturned eye, or close her ear, or make her members numb, ere her thank offerings on the altar lie. And yet, fair moon, methinks I like the best to see thy silvery lustre sprinkled here, when these bare branches all appear full dressed in some more gentle season of the year. I love to see it mingled with the dew, falling to bathe the sleeping buds and flowers, and soft and silent coolly streaming through the whispering leaves that clothe the summer bowers. I love to see thy beaming mantle trail among the flowers spent borders of the rill, with rich deep shadows stamped o'erspread the vale, or bind the forehead of the silent hill. I love to see thee through the foliage peep, where one soft hour before the robin sung her vesper song, and while in downy sleep with peaceful breast she guards her callow young. I love to see thee when the whippoorwill moans in the hedge behind the cottage eaves, and when the plaintive crickets hidden trill their harvest hymn among the golden sheaves. But these are tender memories, aye, and more, fresh budding hope from memory's root that grows to earth clothed in beauty as before, when thou and we have struggled through the snows. Then come, sweet moon, and fondly smile on me, From thy pure azure home with face serene, while I look abroad and up to thee, and bless the great Creator of the scene. Others may call thee fickle, faithless, strange, when veiled in part or wholly from their view. Yet though 12 times a year thou seemest to change, again 12 times I ever find thee true. 'Tis our gross planet, heaving misty shrouds, are rolled before thee, that our darkness brings, just as earth's bulk or vapor hides or clouds our glorious view of higher, holier things. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Tom Tar by Hannah Flagg Gould, read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. I'll tell you now about Tom Tar, the sailor stout and bold, who o'er the ocean roamed so far, to countries new and old. Tom was a man of thousands. He would ne'er complain nor frown, though high and low the wind and sea might toss him up and down. Amid the waters dark and deep he had the happy art, when all around was storm, to keep fair weather in his heart. Though winds were wild and waves were rough, he'd always cast about and find within he'd calm enough to stand the storms without. "For naught," said Tom, "is ever gained by sighs for what we lack, nor can it mend a vessel strained to let our temper crack. And sure I am the worst of storms that any man should dread is that which in the bosom forms and musters to the head." Serene and ever half possessed, his messmates he would cheer, and often put their fears to rest when dangers gathered near. If on the rocks the ship was cast and surges swept the deck, Tom Tar was ever found the last who would forsake the wreck. And when his only hat and shoes the waters plucked from him, why these he felt were small to lose, could he keep up and swim. Then through the billows, foam and spray that rose on every hand, he'd somehow always find a way of getting safe to land. The secret was, the fear and love of heaven had filled his soul. His trust was firm in One above, howe'er the seas might roll. And Tom had sailed to many a shore, and many a wonder seen. The stories he could tell would more than fill a magazine. He'd seen mankind in every state, almost, that a man can know, but envied not the rich and great, nor scorned the poor and low. The monarch in his sight had stood, superb in glittering vest, the savage, too, that roams the wood in skins and feathers dressed. The tribes of many an isle he knew, and beasts and birds and flowers and fruits of many a shape and hue, in lands remote from ours. He'd seen the wide-winged albatross her breast in ocean lave, and bold sea lions playing toss their heads above the wave. He'd seen the dolphin, while his back went flashing to the sun, a swarm of flying fish attack and swallow every one. The porpoise and the spouting whale he sported in his view, and hungry sharks pursued his sail as if they'd eat the crew. And ever when Tom Tar got home, the children at their play were glad to have the sailor come and greet them by the way. Then oft some curious stone or shell the laughing girls and boys would find, and on their aprons fell, to put among their toys. "These pearly shells," said he, "I found where gloomy waters roar. These polished stones, so smooth and round, rough surges washed ashore. Though small to us a pebble seems, 'tis made and marked by One, who gave the warmth and lit the beams of yon great shining sun. And when these pretty shells I find along the ocean strand, their beauteous finish brings to mind their Maker's perfect hand. When on the wildest shore I'm thrown, and far from human eye, I think of Him who made the stone, and shell, and sea, and sky. For He's my friend, and I am His, though cold and rough the blast. My safest guide I know He is, where'er my lot is cast." When Tom passed on, the children said, "These treasures from afar He brought us, blessings on His head, for He's a good Tom Tar." End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Seaman's Hymn by Hannah Flagg Gould, Wilson. Landmen on your downy pillows, while your eyes are sealed in sleep, seamen tossed mid foam and billows roam for you a boisterous deep. When the glorious light of day is on your homes so peaceful dawning, along our pathless, troubled way, the surge swells high, the flood is yawning. When earth's flowers to you are blooming, or your hearths are bright and warm, we behold the wild waves booming, mount the shrouds and brave the storm. Singing birds your hearing greet, your hearts the kindred tone rejoices, while winds that on our canvas beat and roaring ocean join their voices. Then to meet the high and holy, when ye to his throne repair, O before him, meek and lowly, bow for us, as suppliants there. When his blessed day appears, thou dearest, best of all the seven, your souls the gospel herald cheers, but none tells us of rest and heaven. Zion, bid thy sons and daughters, often on the bended knee, cry to him who rules the waters, for the wanderers o'er sea. Now to thee, the seaman's friend, our guide, our light, our ark abiding, our Saviour, we all commend, while time's rude waves in frailty riding. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Mariner's Song of Departure by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. While o'er the bright bay with her streamers at play, our bark in her beauty is gliding, as brothers are we, the glad sons of the sea, our own darling element riding. Good pilot, adieu, for the skies are all blue, and yonder blue billows are bounding. We speed from the port to be off by the fort, while her gun to the sunrise is sounding. We leave all behind that a warm heart can bind in home, love, and friendship endearing, while hope flies before for a far foreign shore as the hand at the rudder is steering. And well do we know the proud waters below, that hence are by us to be ridden. Mid the corals and caves there are mariners' graves, dark wrecks and lost treasures deep hidden. Yet before our frail bark be the way light or dark, our sun and star that we follow is he who unbinds or enchains the strong winds, whose hand holds the seas in its hollow. If o'er the bright skies the wild storm spirit rise, and spread his black wings full of thunder, our canvas will reef, or heave to for relief, and safely his pinions pass under. And so, mid the strife on the flood waves of life, to heaven in our ark lowly bending, for help would we cry, till the dove from on high appears with the peace branch descending. Thus we friend, love, and home, wheresoe'er we may roam the wide seas from pole to equator, we've a light and a high tower in the name and the power of him who is ocean's creator. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Sea Eagle's Fall by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Scott Kelly. An eagle, on his towering wing, hung over the summer sea, and never did airy, feathered king look prouder there than he. He spied the finny tribes below, amid the limpid brine, and felt it now was time to know whereon he was to dine. He saw a noble shining fish so near the surface swim, he felt at once a hungry wish to make a feast of him. Then straight he took his downward course, a sudden plunge he gave, and pouncing seized with murderous force his tempter in the wave. He struck his talons firm and deep within the slippery prize, and hope his ruffian grasp did keep, and high and dry to rise. But ah, it was a fatal stoop, as ever monarch made, and for the rash, that cruel swoop, he soon most dearly paid. The fish had too much gravity to yield to this attack. His feet the eagle could not free from off the scaly back. He'd seized on one too strong and great. His mastery now was gone, and on by that prepondering weight, and downward he was drawn. Nor found he here the element where he could move with grace, and flap and dash his pinions went in ocean's wrinkled face. They could not bring his talons out, his forfeit life to save, and planted thus he writhed about upon his gaping grave. He raised his head and gave a shriek to bid adieu to the light. The water bubbled in his beak, he sank from human sight. The children of the sea came round, the foreigner to view. To see an airy monarch drowned, to them was something new. Some gave a quick, astonished look, and darted swift away, while some his parting plumage shook, and nibbled him for prey. Oh, who that saw that bird at noon, so high and proudly soar, could think how awkwardly, how soon, he'd fall to rise no more. Though glory, majesty, and pride were his an hour ago, deprived of all, that eagle died, for stooping once too low. Now, have you ever known or heard of biped from his sphere, descending like that silly bird, to buy a fish so dear? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Caged Lion by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Scott Kelly. Lion, like a captive king, sad behind thy prison grate. Monarch, how I long to bring back to thee thy lost estate, where thy royal kindred live, where thy native sky is warm. Sufferer, how I long to give freedom to that noble form. Gladly would I know thee there, bounding over Afric's plain, wildly with the desert air wafting wide thy flowing mane. Are there words that can describe what thou wast at liberty, when the Lion of the tribe of Judah names his type in thee? Here, beneath thy keeper's hand, where the blasts of winter freeze, thinkest thou of that palmy land, thy mild country over the seas, seen but through thy prison bars, round thee set so strong and thick, do not sun and moon and stars make thy cowering spirit sick? Grace and majesty and power were thy gifts by nature made, yet in one unhappy hour, all to lose, wast thou betrayed. When thou first wast snared and caught, never after to be free, how thy mighty spirit wrought in thee like a troubled sea. But thou didst not, could not think of the deep indignity to which thou then wast doomed to sink, of the exile thou must be. Oh, that quenched and languid eye tells me of a pining heart, homesick prisoner, sooner die than remain the thing thou art. Liberty to me and mine, liberty is life and breath, so no less to thee and thine, bonds to both but lingering death. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Traveller at the Red Sea by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. At last have I found thee, thou dark rolling sea. I gaze on thy face, and I listen to thee with spirit o'erawed by the sight and the sound, while mountain and desert frown gloomy around. And thee, mighty deep, from afar I behold, which God swept apart for his people of old, that Egypt's proud army, unstained by their blood, received on thy bed to entomb in thy flood. I cast my eye out where the cohorts went down, a throng of pale spectres no waters can drown, with banner and blades, seemed to rise on the waves, as Pharaoh's bold hosts rushed in arms to their graves. But quick from the light of the skies they withdraw, at silent omnipotence shrinking with awe, and each sinks away in his billowy shroud, him who walked here, clothed in fire and a cloud. I stand by the pass the freed Hebrews then trod, sustained by the hand of Jehovah dry shod, and think how the song of salvation they sang, with praise to his name through the wilderness rang. Our Father, who didst then Israel guide, console and rebuke in their wanderings wide, from these gloomy waters, through this desert drear, O still in life's maze to thy pilgrim be near. Let sins that would hold in their service, or slay the soul that would break from their bondage away, forever be drowned in the blood of thy Son, who o'er sin and death hath the victory won. Whilst thou, day by day, wilt thy manna bestow, and give for my thirst the rock fountain to flow, refreshed by the way, will I speed to the clime of rest for the weary, beyond earth and time. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Hebrew Captives by Hannah Flagg Gould, read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. Our altars they razed, and our temples profaned, the blood of our prophets and kindred they drained, and us from our desolate homes did they bear afar, the cold chains of the Paynim to wear. And they who had carried us captive drew nigh, they looked on our woes with an insolent eye. Our burdens were heavy, our fetters were strong, and then they required of us mirth and a song. We hung up our harps on the willows to sleep, by Babylon's river we sat down to weep. The song of the Lord is too holy to sound, we shut in our souls on that dark heathen ground. We thought of our Zion, and sent her a sigh by each gentle breeze that went silently by, but poured not the strains in the proud Paynim's ear, that God and his angels will hearken to hear. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Fragments from Esther, a poem, by Hannah Flagg Gould, read for LibriVox.org by Scott Kelly. The monarch of Persia has wrapped over his breast the vesture whose jewels emblazon the throne. His lovely young queen, who in sackcloth is dressed, is far from his presence, and weeping alone. And who in behalf of her people shall sue? For mercy, to whom will the sovereign give ear? 'Tis death now to be, in his kingdom, a Jew. 'Tis death in his presence, uncalled to appear. The wife of his bosom that peril will take, the helpless young Jewess, so gentle and fair, to live with her people, or die for their sake, will go to her Lord, and her nation declare. For little he deems that his idolized bride, the joy of his heart, the delight of his eyes, is born of that race whom the Persians deride, a people his nation oppress and despise. There's wine at the palace, and feasting and mirth, in Esther's still chamber there's fasting and prayer, while he with the crown has the homage of earth. She calls on her God her doomed people to spare. She thinks of her fathers in Egypt's dark land. She thinks of the bush as in Horeb it burned. She knows who the hearts of the kingdoms hath in hand, to turn them, as rivers of water are turned. To him for support, and for light to her mind, she sends up the cries of her soul from the dust. Then, rising to go to the king, is resigned to do this and perish, if perish she must. With fasting and tears, she is languid and pale, but over her young face beams a sunrise of soul, and flesh, though but feeble and ready to fail, is urged to its point by the Spirit's control. The woman within her is timid and faint, the holy believer, unawed and serene. She goes to the presence, adorned as a saint, with power that has never invested the queen. And now are her people to safely restore to peace and their rights, when resistance had failed. A woman in strength, who drew on the Lord, for strength over the mighty of earth hath prevailed. Fair Jewess, the tears thou hast dropped in the dust, as pearls to Jehovah are precious and bright. The hand that in sorrow has here been thy trust, will crown thee with joy in the kingdom of light. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Gone in Her Beauty by Hannah Flagg Gould. Read for LibriVox.org by Scott Kelly. Oh, she is gone. The wintry blasts that sweep wild round her mansion trouble not her sleep. Gone in her beauty, fast the drifting snows fall cold but harmless over her deep repose. Here, in her circle of its gem bereft, love hath but tears to fill the place she left. Sigh calls to sigh, from aching bosom drawn, void gives to void, the mournful echo gone. Spring will return, and bring around her door sweet opening flowers, their odors there to pour, striving to win her forth, who planted them, once more to smile that they adorn the stem. Yet must they wait her till they die away. She was a fairer, lovelier flower than they, snapped off in blossoming, ere a leaf could fade, cast into darkness, wrapped in silent shade. Oh, she is gone, and where shall burdened grief pour forth her fountains for the soul's relief? Not to the dust to nourish earthly weeds, that yield no balsam while the spirit bleeds. Not unto death's let sorrow's waters flow, but to death's victor may their weeper go. His risen glory, chasing mortal gloom, shows grief a rainbow, bending over the tomb. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.